Scientists working at the Great Lakes Forestry Centre in Sault Ste Marie are exploring new ways to help nature bounce back, especially in areas that have been impacted by human activity. One of the tools they're using is something called dark diversity, basically looking at which species should be there but aren't, to figure out why some plants come back and others don't. This approach can help reveal the hidden effects of human activities, and it's already being put to use in Sudbury to improve restoration efforts. Let's check it out.
My name is Elise Deschênes. I am a forest biologist with the Great Lakes Forestry Centre that is part of the Canadian Forest Services. So it may be a very nebulous term. It's less complicated than you think. It's basically the term that's used to describe the species that are missing from an ecosystem, but present in the surrounding region and theoretically able to survive and thrive in that ecosystem. So if, let's say, I take this little shrubland as an example, instead of looking at the species that I can actually count and look at, dark diversity tries to estimate those species that aren't there but I think would be able to show up. And the way that I can figure that out is by knowing what are my species in the surrounding region and which ones grow together. So basically, let's say here, I have 3 species showing up. And I know that in other places in the region, those 3 species almost always show up with an extra 2. But for some reason, those extra 2, they're not here. And there's a bunch of reasons that they're not here. But since I know that those 5 species are associated together and they typically can grow in the same areas, the same conditions, then I know that those 2 extra species would be part of my dark diversity here because of that association. And that's how I can estimate those species that are missing but able to grow here.
My name is Kieran Santala. I'm a forest biologist working for the Canadian Forest Service. Today we're here in Sudbury and we're looking at applying the dark diversity approach to improve restoration efforts here in the city. Sudbury is a pretty unique place. So at one time it would have been considered one of the world's most environmentally damaged areas. But now it's considered a restoration success story. And people come here from all over the world to try and figure out how Sudbury was able to restore its landscape. Within the city of Sudbury, there was extensive logging followed by the smelting of sulfur-rich metal ore. And as a result, we lost most of our vegetation cover. So where I'm standing here today would have at one time looked like bare rock, maybe a little bit of soil. But around the 1970s, industry, local academic partners, local government, as well as stewardship groups started working together to restore the landscape. Local industry was able to drastically reduce its smelter emissions. Academic partners did research to figure out how to fix the soil. So at Laurentian University, they figured out that if they applied limestone and fertilizer, they could actually repair the soils and make them healthy so that plants could grow within them again. And then the city of Greater Sudbury, with support from local industry and community groups, started to undertake massive tree planting efforts. 50 years since the beginning of the regreening program, 35,000 hectares of area have been limed and grass seeded, and over 10 million trees have been planted. So most of Sudbury forests today look like what you can see around me, and they look like a young forest. However, there's still concerns that there might be low in terms of their biodiversity. So there's a lot of interest in reintroducing understory trees, understory shrubs, or native species like flowers, ferns, and grasses that would naturally grow underneath the dominant plant canopy. But which species should we plant and where? And that's where new tools that we're developing within our lab, like dark diversity, can help. So a lot of what we do in our lab is we look at plant functional traits. So plant traits tell us about how a plant species is going to respond to its environment, but also how it's going to influence its environment. So one of the 2 traits that we look at often is specific leaf area, so how big is a leaf, versus leaf dry matter content, so how thick and rigid is a leaf. If you were to take something like blueberry that grows in an open, dry condition, these leaves are going to tend to be smaller and thicker, and that allows it to grow in drought conditions. Where if you take something like mayflower that grows underneath the canopy, these leaves are going to be larger and thinner. And this is because it's kind of like a solar panel where it wants to produce large leaves that are able to capture the light that's kind of blocked out by the above canopy.
We found that a lot of the missing species in Sudbury were orchids and ferns. And orchids and ferns have very small seeds that disperse very easily, so they can disperse wherever they want, but they have very specific germination requirements and soil conditions. So this let us know that, well, the species are able to get there, but they're not able to grow. So maybe for them to recover, we would need to improve the soil conditions first. And we also found that some other missing species were shrubs and trees with fruits on them. So these are much larger seeds that can't disperse quite as easily and depend a lot more on birds, for example, that will chew them up and bring them around. So that indicates to us that in the case of these fruit-bearing shrubs, there might be a lack of dispersal by birds, and we might need to improve the conditions so maybe these birds can come back. The idea for us is to have a case-by-case approach, and that's what we like about dark diversity, is that it is a case-by-case approach that really depends on the ecosystem. So I guess ideally this method could be used in any ecosystem if it makes sense for it to be used. So that would be my end goal, is that people use it according to their needs and whatever information they need to get out of it.
There are several ways of monitoring the health of an ecosystem. Click on this video to see how our experts are studying watersheds to uncover the secrets of water, forests, and climate change at a research site in Northern Ontario. Make sure you do all the YouTube things, like and subscribe, and keep an eye out for our next video.